Welcome into a new hour of CBS Sports HQ. I'm Amanda Guerra with you, getting you ready for Week 5 in college football. Matt Corral trying to make his case for Heisman this weekend when Ole Miss takes on Alabama in Tuscaloosa. We're talking about the SEC on CBS.
The SEC on CBS Game of the Week is a big one. With conference title and playoff implications on the line, Ole Miss heads to Tuscaloosa to take on #1 Alabama. Ole Miss hasn't been relevant on the national scene since 2015. But in just his second year as head coach, the Lane Train has the Rebels rolling, led by Heisman Trophy favorite Matt Corral.
Long pass wide open. Sanders catches it, backs into the end zone. Touchdown, Ole Miss.
Lane Kiffin's career was resurrected under Nick Saban as the offensive coordinator for the national championship team in 2015. Now, Kiffin will have to overcome one of the most mind-boggling stats in college football. Nick Saban is a perfect 23-0 against his former assistant coaches. 23-0. And if you're looking for any bulletin board material, Kiffin provided that. But at Alabama, it's always about the details. And if it gets into a shootout, Saban is confident his quarterback, Bryce Young, will be up for the challenge.
The quarterback looks his way, then throws. Man is wide open, caught over the shoulder. Billingsley, touchdown, Alabama.
Beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa is a tall task, but Ole Miss is one of only 2 teams since 2015 to leave Bryant Denny with a win. Can Kiffin and the high-powered Rebels shock the world, or will the Tide keep rolling and take down Ole Miss for a 6th straight time? We're in for a battle of unbeatens Saturday afternoon in Tuscaloosa on CBS.
It will be a very exciting Week 5 in the world of college football. Amanda Guerra with you, along with Brady Quinn, Danny Cannell. We're going to get their picks for about 20 or plus games over the next hour or so. We're going to start with this one, Ole Miss at Alabama. Ole Miss 3-0 for the first time since 2015. Massive game for Matt Corral to see what he can go ahead and do. Alabama favored by 14.5 at home. The total here, it's a big number, 79. Brady, what do you think about this game?
A lot of points. Maybe not quite as many as what some of our friends out west are predicting, but this really will put one of the 2 quarterbacks in the driver's seat for the Heisman. But let's not forget, too, Ole Miss gave Alabama some problems just a year ago. And this is a better Ole Miss team than I think we saw last year, in part because of DJ Durkin, that defense, and where they're at right now. All that being said, it's Alabama. That's a big spread. That's a big number, but I'm willing to lay it because of that number. 23-0 against his former assistants. Not only do they win, I think they handle Ole Miss, and this will be the greatest challenge Ole Miss has had, Danny, but they are coming off a bye.
I think there's going to be a theme to my picks anyway, that all good things must come to an end. Like across the board. This season's been awesome. It's been wild. We've seen upsets. I think this is when some of the favorites rear their ugly head. I think the worst thing that happened to Ole Miss was last year's game and how much we've all talked about how much success they had against Alabama's defense. I think that's all Alabama has heard about on the defensive side of the ball, which is supposed to be Nick Saban's specialty. Ole Miss is awesome. It's a great story. I do think they'll present some challenges, and I would love, because this has been a very trendy underdog play, I would love to see this get under 14, somewhere. That 14.5 is a dangerous number. Last year it was right around, I think Alabama won by 15, so it's right around this danger spot. But I'm with you, Brady. I think they're gonna unload on them. I mean, last week we know what they're capable of throwing the football. We know what they're capable of on offense. And then Jamison Williams has 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns. So now they have the special teams going too. Are you kidding me? And I also, like you mentioned DJ Durkin on the defense side of the ball, I think Ole Miss will have more success than they had last year. For me, you have to take the under on principle alone. If it goes over 79, you tip your cap and you say, congratulations, that was insane, because the likelihood is this is going to go under that one. Everyone's predicting this massive shootout. Maybe we get it, but more oftentimes than not, Alabama is going to be able to control the time of possession, can slow this game down a little bit. When all Lane Kiffin and Jeff Lebby, their offensive coordinator, want to go fast, get into a shootout, I think Nick Saban controls the tempo of this game with his team.
All the storylines about the quarterbacks, right? At least that's some of the discussion going into it. And the defense is coming to play here, right? They're hearing all this talk. They're saying, not so fast. And that's where I think Will Anderson has a big game, too, disrupting things in the backfield. And as you said, the scheme for what used to be, remember that old land shark defense they used to call it? Now we get a little bit more of that mixed in. So I'm with you. I like the under. I actually probably like the under in this game better than the spread just because of the hook there. But I do think Alabama wins. Alabama will dominate, but not quite as high scoring as most think.
Guys, I love that game. I really like this next one here. Arkansas at Georgia. I mean, just given what we've seen so far from Arkansas, it's been a lot of fun. I won money that last game. Congratulations to me. But Georgia is the big favorite here, 18.5. The total is 49. Brady, you've said throughout the season, Georgia's the best team in the nation right now.
I don't know that I said that throughout the season. I think they're playing the best football right now, which is a little bit different. The problem I have with this spread is it's too big. I mean, it's just too big of a number. As good as Georgia has looked at times, as stout as that defense has been, this is a different challenge, especially when you go up against a quarterback that can run like KJ Jefferson. And I think if you were concerned about, all right, maybe there's that hangover effect for Arkansas after beating Texas. Well, then after beating Texas A&M, it ain't happening, okay? Sam Pittman has built this program to basically say we're going to get into a brawl every single time they go out there in the field. It's going to be ugly, and we're going to find ways of keeping these games close. And I love the way he's built up this program, truly. So Georgia wins this game. They're just a more talented football team. I love what JT Daniels has brought to the passing game, especially since they haven't been able to run the football effectively. But in this one, I've got Arkansas covering, Georgia winning. But you got to go with the under here, right? Tell me you got to go with the under.
I don't know. So, you know the theme, Amanda. All good things must come to an end. So I'm actually on Georgia. So, and Brady and I are going to be on the same side of a lot of plays, but not on this one. I'm actually on the other side. I think this could be a game where Georgia has a breakout game offensively, where they put up some points. And against an Arkansas defense, which has been really good, we saw them shut down Texas A&M last week, but Zach Calzada, a struggling offensive line. JT Daniels is playing with a ton of confidence. They're starting to get more players healthy. They're starting to open up things with this new look Georgia offense. I think Georgia has their way, but I also think that you mentioned Treylon Burks, one of the best playmakers in the country. He's dynamic. KJ Jefferson, Sam Pittman did say both of them will be sore, but they should be able to go. So that to me says they're fine because everybody's sore after a few games in college football. So I think they'll get a couple big plays in this game. I don't see them methodically driving down the field against Georgia's defense, but I think this will be the biggest test that Georgia has faced defensively from an offense. Look how bad Clemson has been. And we thought that was an indicator. And don't get me wrong, Georgia's defense is great, but this will be the biggest test that they've faced so far to date. And I think Arkansas can put up some points, trailing from behind, maybe even one of those backdoor over type situations.
I just think it's such a unique test, right? Because, you usually struggle against things that you don't see in practice. And Georgia's not going up against a running quarterback in practice like you're going to see from KJ Jefferson, who is a big drink of water. When you see him out there on the perimeter, he can do some damage. So this game's going to be ugly. It's going to be low scoring. It's going to be the same thing we've seen. I'm buying into what Sam Pittman has built there. This is not coming to end. This Arkansas team's going to be hanging around for a while, Danny. We're going to have to live. We're going to have to live with some of these ugly games that we've seen from them so far.
Let's see.
Weekend number 7, Cincinnati at Notre Dame. Of course, Notre Dame coming off that massive win over the weekend here. Cincinnati's the favorite on the road, though. I'm going to give Brady last word. So, Danny, you go first in this one. What do you think about this game? Total here, 50 and a hook as well.
So I went back and forth on this game, but I'm going to go with the Fighting Irish in this one. I think this team has been resilient. They found ways to win. It hasn't been pretty at all times. But I thought last week against Wisconsin, this defense really showed me. And Cincinnati's going to get a lot of the love on the defensive side of the ball, and deservedly so. But Notre Dame, I think, is going to present some challenges for Desmond Ridder, who could be that thing that makes me look foolish. If Desmond Ridder has a great game, they're going to win. But I think Notre Dame has enough pieces on the defensive side of the ball to slow him down, to make him a little bit one-dimensional, to take away his legs and force him to throw it through the air. And actually, I go back and I look at Cincinnati's game versus Indiana, which was a nice win. The score, to me, was a little bit deceiving. They should have lost that game. And Indiana's not very good. Michael Penix had a bunch of rough throws at the end of that game. I just think Notre Dame is a better team, and they're playing at home, and they've owned this matchup, historically. I think this is Notre Dame all the way.
A couple things. First, let's just talk about how it is. This is an elimination game for the college football playoff. I mean, both these teams, I think, has aspirations for that. Whoever loses on the outside looking in, Cincinnati needs this because they're a group of 5 team. And even if they win the conference championship, that one loss, maybe you'd say it was a good one loss depending on how Notre Dame's season ends. But the reality is this is their toughest opponent. They've got to win this game if they want a shot at playing in the college football playoff. And on the flip side, Notre Dame doesn't have that conference championship game, and it's still 4 teams for the playoff. They need to continue to keep beating some of these better, high-ranked teams to build up that resume. So it's an elimination game for the playoff. That's one thing I'd point at. And I want to touch on something you said about Desmond Ridder. Notre Dame hasn't faced a mobile quarterback like Ridder probably since Florida State and Jordan Travis, who gave them issues throughout the course of that game, extending plays and making some plays. So that's something to keep an eye on. But there's so much familiarity between Mike Denbrock, who used to be with Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, now at Notre Dame, used to be the defensive coordinator at Cincinnati. It's going to be a cat and mouse game throughout. And I think the thing that sticks out to me the most is Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame, has done such an unbelievable job dealing with a third string now left tackle, dealing with what you could say is a second or third string quarterback that comes in relief last week, continually constructing game plans that play to the strength of Jack Cohen when he's in there, play to the strengths of Tyler Buchner when he's in there, preparing Drew Pine to go in like he did last week and absolutely excel, and finding ways of getting Michael Mayer and Kevin Austin and Braden Lenzy and Joe Wilkins, all their playmakers to football. He has done an unbelievable job and has been a big reason why this team is still undefeated right now. So I think this is going to be a low-scoring affair because of that familiarity between the two teams. But you're telling me Notre Dame's a home dog? Like, did we go through this last week?
Right.
Like, we went through this last week. Wisconsin's a 6-point favorite, and they blow them out on a neutral site. Now they're playing at home, and they're still an underdog? Give me the points. Give me my Irish. They don't just cover. They win outright in a low-scoring affair.
At some point, they will be respected. Maybe next week. We're going to have to see. We get a Big 12 matchup. Number 21 Baylor at Oklahoma State. The Cowboys are the favorite here by 3.5. The total 49 and a hook there in Stillwater. What do you think, Danny?
This Oklahoma State team, to me, is getting right at the right time. I think Mike Gundy has been kind of shelved for a while because the team hasn't been great. And Spencer Sanders, their quarterback, has slowly started to play a little bit more solid, a little bit more careful with the football. But Oklahoma State's defense the past several years has actually been pretty solid. And I think that'll be the story of this game. And I look at the other side, Baylor. I think it'll be a nice story for them, a nice game. What they did last week against Iowa State was really impressive, kind of getting a signature win for Dave Aranda early in his career there. But I think this game will be Oklahoma State, so I'm going to go ahead and take them in this matchup. And I also think it is going to be a lower scoring affair. I'm going to take the under as well because I think both of these defenses, Dave Aranda, signature former defensive coordinator, his defense has been playing really well. I just mentioned Oklahoma State's defense getting better. I think this will be a low scoring affair, uncharacteristic for a Big 12 matchup between these two.
I'm with you on laying the points with Oklahoma State, but I think we'll see more points in this matchup. This is the Big 12. Let's not forget about that. And look, going back to Baylor, who knows how that game ends up if there's not, if the 2-point conversion ends up, being made up in the end. I'm not so much buying in Baylor right now. I think what Dave Aranda's built, it's on the right track, but you said it best. Spencer Sanders, this offense, it's starting to kind of come along. Mike Gundy, traditionally, they've kind of built some things slowly, but got going as the season's going on. I think they smell blood in the water, too. When you look at this Big 12 conference, we're not seeing the same Oklahoma we've seen year in and year out. I think they look at this as a big-time opportunity for both these teams, but I don't necessarily like the hook, although I think Oklahoma State will be able to take care of business there in Stillwater. So I'll lay the 3.5. I do differ with you. I do think it'll be a higher scoring game going over that 49.5 number, which looks really low to me for a Big 12 matchup.
Another Big 12 matchup with an okay number here. I don't know how I feel about this. Number 6, Oklahoma at Kansas State. Oklahoma favored by 10.5 there. 52.5 is the total. Brady, what do you think?
Again, going back to what we've talked about Oklahoma all year long, we always talk about them being the top of the Big 12. The whole storyline with them this season was supposed to be their defense was going to be more improved. I just haven't seen it. And I think when you look at Kansas State, how they like to play games, similar to what we talked about with Arkansas, they'll make some things ugly. Skylar Thompson will take off with the football. Deuce Vaughn and the way they run the football, control the clock, play solid, sound defense. And we haven't seen Spencer Rattler get rid of the inability to not force the ball at times when teams make him go the long, hard way to work it down the field. So this number is way too big for me at 10.5. I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't think Kansas State wins this. I think Oklahoma wins, but I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a close game that actually ends up being a little bit more scoring than I think we're accustomed to.
So I said this is going to be when the heavyweights kind of put their foot down, right? I don't think they're a heavyweight right now. They haven't shown it on the field. Sorry, Amanda.
No, it's okay.
How do you
It's okay.
trust this team? They keep setting records, the wrong way. 23 points last week was a record low for Lincoln Riley in his tenure. What do they back that up with? 16. They only have 57 rushing yards. That's the lowest rushing total for an Oklahoma Sooner team since 2012. It keeps getting worse. Now we've got fans. I know Amanda wasn't one of them, but they're calling for Caleb Williams, who I actually would agree with the fans just not doing it at the game. I do think they need to make a change at quarterback, but I can't trust Oklahoma here with a number this big against this Kansas State team, which I think can make the game a little bit uglier. The one thing I would disagree, I think that Oklahoma's defense is, for the first time in a while, championship caliber. They didn't like Nebraska. They held
I'm not going that
West
far.
Virginia. They held
Nebraska,
points.
but at times Nebraska matriculated the ball downfield. They moved it around.
Right.
They made some mistakes when it came from it, but I'm not saying champion. Maybe Big 12 championship, not national championship.
But maybe that's their saving grace, is the defense can kind of carry the water for them while they figure out offensive line issues, quarterback issues, offensive issues that you would trust with Lincoln Riley. But I can't trust him with 10.5 points in this one. But I would say it's going to be a lower scoring affair. So we're on the same side, taking Kansas State in the points. I just think it's going to be a lower scoring affair.
I have a question for you because I've got a theory. I think part of the reason why fans feel more emboldened to boo, especially at college,
getting paid. They're professionals.
They're getting paid now.
Even though
I think that plays a role in all.
Absolutely, it is.
You see it at the pro level, and it's happening now at the college level.
I see it on social media when I put out something about booing these are professionals now. Even though, and Spencer Rattler is somebody who is getting paid, the narrative of, they're getting paid now is not true for every single player. So when you're booing the team, you are booing majority of the team. They're not making money. They're still just student athletes who love the game.
And the other thing is, it's not a significant amount of money.
Right.
These are marketing deals, which we don't truly know the details behind them. So it is a little bit out of nowhere where you sit there and say, it's different when you're a pro. They're paying for the ticket, the price for admission, which helps the revenue, which helps the owner figure out how to pay you. But the reality is that's not the case with these young men. So I feel for them. I think we also forget Spencer Rattler's still an underclassman. Yeah. I know he was a starter last year, but he went through his growing pains. He's still growing into that position. I'm not giving up on him quite yet. I think he's too talented. I think there's enough things in his growth that I saw from him last year that I think he can do this year before you just throw in the towel and move on to Caleb Williams.
I'm sorry to expand the segment, but I do wonder if they still play Caleb. Remember the first couple games, they'd let him come in and run. I wonder if they're more hesitant to do that because then it just makes that noise grow louder.
And either way, just support your team. Do not boo. All right, guys, let's recap their picks here. We get 3 Lock Unity picks here, both like Alabama and the under there.
Where's the confetti? Where's the confetti?
I don't know what the confetti is. Notre Dame and the under, and they both like Kansas State and the over there. Guys, hang on just a second. Coming up next here on CBS Sports HQ, we'll take a look at ranked teams in the Big Ten, their games this week, including Michigan at Wisconsin. Can Wisconsin bounce back after that loss to Notre Dame? We'll get Danny and Brady's picks next. Welcome back. Getting ready for week 5 in college football there. Taking a look at Big Ten ranked games. We've got a big one. Number 14, Michigan at Wisconsin. Wisconsin was ranked 18th going into their matchup against Notre Dame. They are now out of the top 25. Welcome back in. Brady Quinn, Danny Kanell. Let's take a look at some of these games, including number 14, Michigan at Wisconsin. Basically a pick-em here. Wisconsin, Brady, you were at that game. You got to see him in person. What do you think about this one?
Well, the question really becomes their offense and what they do with Graham Mertz. Turn the football over 4 times, 3 for interceptions, for return for touchdowns. And the problem is they lack an identity on offense that I think we've come to know for quite some time. The ability to run the football and base some things off of that. But we're just not seeing it right now from the offensive side of the ball, whether it's the O-line or Mertz turning the football over and being incapable of guiding him in that way. Their defense is still one of the best in college football. So that's going to be the challenge, I think, for Michigan. But on the flip side, look, Michigan found their identity. I was questioning that going into the season. Like, what can Jim Harbaugh hang his hat on? He's gone back like the old Bo Schembechler days and said, look, we're just going to run the football down your throat. We've got a couple backs in Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins we feel fantastic about. Offensive line, 2 tight end sets. We're going to pound away, and we're going to create some big plays off of that. So this game is basically a pick 'em. I'm going to go ahead and lay the point here with Michigan. I think they're at a much better point both offensively and defensively with where they are. And I think Wisconsin's still trying to find a lot of things out.
When you saw this number, were you surprised? Like I thought Michigan would be a 3.5 point favorite. Like I just thought I thought Michigan would be a heavier favorite.
I think it's a credit to the fan base. Camp Randall is a tough place to play. That's a great environment. I think it's more a credit to the home field advantage that Wisconsin typically has.
I'm taking Michigan. I'm going to lay the point. I can't trust Graham Mertz at this point. I mean, he had 5 touchdowns in his opening game as the quarterback at Wisconsin. We're thinking, oh, man, this is going to be fun to watch. He's had 5 touchdowns since that game in 9 games. And it's just been one letdown after another rough performance on the national stage. I wonder if Paul Chryst is debating whether he has the right guy, if he's going to make a change, because I see a quarterback that has a massive crisis of confidence. So I'm going to go ahead and take Michigan. I do think it'll be a lower scoring affair too, because I haven't seen Cade McNamara open it up either. I mean, his every game it's like 9 of 11.
He's less than 15 attempts. He hasn't done more than 15 attempts.
Yeah, so he does not throw it. So I think this will be a bloodbath. 2 teams run into a wall, which is going to be a low scoring game.
I like the under better than who laid the point here, basically being a pick 'em. I think the under is for sure the play. But I thought that last week, and it didn't work out so well with Wisconsin. So
we get number 11, Ohio State at Rutgers. Ohio State, by the way, has won 75 of its last 79 games against unranked teams here. They get 15 on the road, the total 56 and a hook. Danny, what's your play in this game?
I hope Ohio State keeps all their players on the field this game. That was not the prettiest one there.
Not escorted off the field?
No. I'm going to go ahead and take Ohio State here. It's been a great story for Greg Schiano. Played Michigan pretty tough, but I do feel like Ohio State is starting to elevate themselves. I think their offense really is finding identity. You talk about identity with TreVeyon Henderson toting the rock. He's averaging 11 yards per carry in the last 2 games. Granted, the competition hasn't been great. I think Rutgers is one of those teams that could present some challenges, maybe up till halftime, but then the depth of Ohio State takes over on that one. I do think it'll be a lower scoring game though too, so I'll take the under in this game as well.
Okay, so I've got the under in this game. I think that's the play here, but this is a recipe for disaster for Ohio State. Because the one thing I think Rutgers can do is they can play you tough and hang around. We saw that last week versus Michigan. Shut Michigan out in the entire second half. They kept things close, 1-possession ball game there in the end. It will be the Isaiah Pacheco show running the football for Rutgers, trying to find ways of getting him touches. This is Ohio State defense that I still just don't have faith in. I understand their big win last week. Look at who they're playing against. Different Rutgers team. Greg Schiano understands, too, the personnel and the scheme of this Ohio State team, being a former defensive coordinator there. So I love Rutgers in this case. I don't think Ohio State necessarily has earned the right to be a double-digit favorite versus another Big Ten opponent like Rutgers that has come a long way, I think, from where they were. So don't be shocked if Ohio State only wins this thing by maybe a couple scores by 10 points. Rutgers is a different animal now with Greg Schiano back there building it back up.
We get number 5, Iowa at Maryland. I will tell you, ever since Iowa has been in the top 5, Chris Hassel's been showing up to work in jeans, no tie, and some white sneakers. So he's feeling a little swag. He might have to put back on the tie if they drop out of the top 5.
Iowa fans have swag. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't go that far. I did not go that far.
That's jeans and white sneakers is swag for an Iowa fan.
He thinks they're very fancy. Iowa is favored by 4 on the road at Maryland. The total here is 46. Does Chris keep going with no tie and the white sneaks?
Yeah, I think you will in this case. I'm willing to lay the points here with Iowa. I mean, here's what I think you have. You have got a defense that is solid, sound. They're not going to let you throw over their heads. And that's what Talia Tagovailoa would like to do. That's the strength of this Maryland team, is their ability really with their talented playmakers on the outside to create big plays in the passing game. I just don't see it happening. And I think Iowa's going to do what they always do. They're going to matriculate the ball down the field with a rushing attack, some play action. Spencer Petras will have his moments. But for the most part, it is going to be one of those kind of boring Iowa games where they slow down the high big play ability and explosiveness. And I just think the Hawkeyes, they have that recipe for success to shut down a team like Maryland that so far has gotten off to a great start this season, but I think their run has come to an end at this point.
Amanda, I really like working with you, but I wish Hassel was here today because I'm picking the upset. I think the Terps get it done, not only cover, but I think they win outright. I do like them with the points, but what I like even better is the under, because we all know about Iowa's defense and how great they have been playing. But Maryland's defense is also quietly having a really nice season too. They're only giving up 14 points per game, which is good for 8th in the country. So both of these defenses, I think, will be trying to establish themselves. Tyler Goodson was held in check last week to Colorado State, so I think Maryland should have a little bit of success. I'm Spencer Petras, I'm kind of on the fence with. I've seen moments, but he's not just going to be this game changer at quarterback. He's going to be like every other Iowa quarterback we've seen for the last 25 years, a game manager. In this game,
wait,
I don't know.
Brad Banks in that group then? I think if you said 25 years, that's Brad Banks.
Right, that is a long time.
Have some respect for Brad Banks, okay?
All right, I'll bring that one back just a little bit. They've had 1 or 2 that have been game breakers. But I'm going to go ahead and take the Terps. But I think it's going to be a lower scoring game, too.
I'm sure Chris Hassel's upstairs yelling now
as
he walks.
He's rattling off guys.
Yeah. We get Indiana at
Ricky Stanzi? Get out of here with that.
Indiana at number 4, Penn State. Penn State, the big home favorite here. 10.5. at home, total 52.5. Our producer Jack was just at Penn State over the weekend. He has now been indoctrinated into that school. What do you think about this game?
That's interesting. Did not know that. I think this is a bad matchup for Indiana, and really for Michael Penix in particular. He's had a hard time. He's coming back from a second ACL injury to that knee, turning the football over a little bit too much. And this is just a defense that on the road, and you can't afford to do that because that's really the strength of Penn State is their secondary. So tough matchup from that standpoint. And I think when you look at their offensive coordinator, Mike Yurcich, who's the third in 3 years' time, they're really starting to find their flow at Penn State. Sean Clifford's got a great feel for this. The big plays are coming. The run game's there. I just think Indiana was a great story a year ago, Danny, but not the case here. I'm going to go ahead and lay the 10.5 points. And I think this is a low-scoring game because I don't know how much Indiana's going to score in this one.
I liked the Tom Allen squad last year. It was a great story for college football. I think they really benefited from playing without crowds, like without playing with fans. I think they were a team that took advantage of that. They kind of captured lightning in a bottle. You are spot on. Michael Penix, I don't have very much confidence in, but also the defense. They're 93rd in scoring, which is kind of not helped by Michael Penix throwing a few pick sixes on the season. That doesn't help their scoring totals. But I think Penn State, like you, is going to have a field day with this one. So I'm going to go ahead and lay the points, and I think Indiana's going to have trouble scoring, so I'm on the under too.
Western Kentucky at number 17, Michigan State. Michigan State surviving against Nebraska there in overtime. They are favored at home by 10.5. A little bit of a bigger total here at 60 and a hook. What do you think, Brady?
Different animal this week with Western Kentucky coming in town. Bottom line is Kenneth Walker is one of the best running backs in college football. I think they'll be able to have their way running the football. Peyton Thorne has been a good decision maker too this year at the quarterback spot too, making some big plays downfield. And Mel Tucker's got this Michigan State defense and really this team back to, I think, the identity that Mark D'Antonio built up for them. I can't remember a team in recent history, Danny, that has made a dramatic turnaround like Michigan State has after going through a lull there and then with only 2 wins last year, now to look the way they have this year. This is a darn good football team. And I know they've got, 20-some transfers, 20 freshmen. I mean, it's almost a new team, but they've been able to put it all together. So I'm going to go ahead and lay the points here with Michigan State. And again, another game that goes on the under. Don't know how much Western Kentucky is going to score in this one. Michigan State will be able to score quite enough.
So Bailey Zappi, the quarterback for Western Kentucky, is averaging 408 yards per game. That's second in the country behind Virginia's Brennan Armstrong. I think this has backdoor cover all over it because I think Michigan State's going to win. Western Kentucky just keep throwing the yard. They just keep throwing the rock all around the yard. I think Michigan State will have control of this, but they had a backdoor cover for me against Army, so maybe it's a personal attachment. I keep going back to Western Kentucky, but I think they do that. And I also think they're going to struggle to get off the field. Michigan State, Peyton Thorne, I think will have a nice game. We already know what Kenneth Walker III can do, so I'm going to take the over on this one. We're on opposite sides of both of them here.
See that protection he's getting right there? That ain't happening versus Michigan State, all right? You can be under a little more duress than that.
Maybe so.
Opposite sides on that one, but we did have 2 lock unity picks on this one. They're both liking Michigan.
There's the confetti, Jack.
I don't know where the confetti is. The Michigan in the under. We're saving it for the very end. And then both also liking Penn State and the under as well. Coming up on HQ, we're going to head to the SEC. We get Auburn at LSU. This one's full of storylines, including potentially TJ Finley heading back to face his old team. We're going to get their picks next. Welcome back to a fabulous edition of CBS Sports HQ. We got a lot of ranked, unranked games this week in the SEC. There are a lot of storylines. Auburn at LSU. We get Brian Harsin's first taste of SEC competition. And then A&M, can they bounce back after that loss to Arkansas over the weekend? Let's bring back two in. This is where you guys have me in these commercial breaks. Danny Kanell, Brady Quinn, Auburn at LSU. Auburn's got to figure out a quarterback situation here. They benched Bo Nix in favor of TJ Finley. TJ Finley would be facing his old team here. LSU favored by 3.5. The total is 54.5. Danny, what you think?
So I kind of hate this game. I don't know what's going to happen with Bo Nix or TJ Finley, so there's some uncertainty there. I feel like you have to trust LSU playing at home. They'll have a packed house. Baton Rouge will be rocking. There'll be noise factor there. TJ Finley going against his old team. I know he looked good in relief, but he wasn't great in relief. He did leave him down the field on a game-winning drive, but I don't know how familiar he was with the system because he did transfer in late. And then if they go with Bo Nix, do I love him? Not really. I think the one thing I do trust is LSU's offense. And with an Auburn team that I wonder how invested they are after really not looking great last week defensively, I think this will be a higher scoring game. I don't know, LSU's defense is not the caliber they were when they won a national championship. So I think this game could get a little bit wacky. So I like the over better than I like LSU.
I am right there with you, buddy. I don't know what to make of this spread. I think because of the hook here, I'm on the side of Auburn, so I'll go ahead and take the 3.5 points. But I realize there is some indecision between the two quarterbacks. If it was me, I'd go with the more experienced player first. And then at that point, if he can't lead me to victory, I feel like things aren't going well, then you bring in TJ Finley. You see if that familiarity does lead you to something. But one thing Auburn should be able to hang their hat on is that rushing attack. With Hunter and Bigsby, they are able to tote the rock a little bit. Both teams, a lot of scoring. Love the over. Hate having to make a play here on the spread. If I had to, I'll take the 3.5. If it goes down to 3, maybe I'm on the other side there with Max Johnson and LSU.
Both of you like the over there a little bit more. We get number 10 Florida at Kentucky here. Florida's won the past 33 of the past 34 meetings between these two schools. Kentucky 4-0 though for the first time since 2018. Florida favored by 8.5. The total 55. Brady, what are your plays?
Oh, I got an uncle who played ball at Kentucky, so he's always really upset anytime I pick Florida. Understanding the rivalry, understanding the history there. Pick Florida against Kentucky.
Been right most of the time.
Yeah, well, for my entire lifetime, I've been right, and I'm not going to change the opinion here. I'm going to lay the points. I'm going to take Florida. They're just a better football team. I think we saw that versus Alabama defensively, the way they can get after. But two, I don't care who you put at quarterback. Both Dan Mullen, he figures out a way to put both in positions to run the football and succeed from the pocket. And look, Kentucky's kind of had their moment. Will Levis has been serviceable at times this year. They've got some playmakers, but I think that all comes to a standstill here versus Florida. So I think a lower scoring game. I don't know how much Kentucky scores in this one, but I think Florida scores enough to cover that spread.
I think Florida's getting pretty good. Like the game against Alabama, I was worried about them last week against Tennessee. 17-14 at halftime. They took over that game physically late. Showcase that they're another class. Kentucky's won their games by 7, 5, and 6 points against competition that's not as good as Florida is. And I tell you what, you got to give credit to Dan Mullen. This team is 3rd in the country in rushing after what we see last year with Kyle Trask, throwing the ball over the yard. He works with the talent that he's given. He's got Emory Jones who can run. He's got Anthony Richards that can run. He's got 3 running backs in the backfield who can run. So what does he do? He establishes the line of scrimmage. I love what he's done with this team. They have an identity. And their defense, to me, is one of the reasons I like the under in this one, too. Because after that first quarter against Alabama, they held them in check for only 10 points the remainder of the game. So I think this will be a lower scoring game, too.
Mississippi State at A&M. Of course, A&M losing over the weekend to Arkansas up there in Arlington, Texas. You guys had unity on the last one. You were in complete disagreement here on this one there. A&M favored by 7, the over-under 47. Brady.
Yeah, I understand the concerns of the quarterback position for Texas A&M, but the reality is Jimbo Fisher will get back to hanging his hat on the rushing attack, that good defense versus a Mississippi State team that I think will struggle to be able to do much offensively. So I'm willing to go ahead and say I'll lay the 7 points. I think Texas A&M is that much better of a team than Mississippi State, and I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair because of that defense, because of some of the offensive ineptitude with what we see at the quarterback position right now for A&M.
So I look at this one, and this to me is the hangover game. Like Texas A&M feeling sorry for themselves a little bit. They got beat last week. I wonder where their mentality is against the team.
You only have a hangover when you win.
You're feeling sorry. There's both ways. We've all had long nights. They work a lot of different ways, those hangovers. But this one I think is one I wonder where their mindset is too. I do worry about their offense, and I think Mississippi State can put up some points on this defense. What we've seen from Mike Leach throughout his tenure, wherever he's been able to figure out an offense. And Will Rogers, his quarterback, is still putting up big numbers in the SEC. I think they'll get the ball out of his hands quickly. He'll figure out ways to supplement a run game with the quick screen game. So I like Mississippi State with the points here, and I do like an over here as well. Total opposite sides.
I told you, total opposite sides there. All right, recap their picks. Of course, you got total opposite sides on that one. There is one confetti pick as we're talking about the confetti here that we're going to have at the end of the show. Florida at Kentucky, both like Florida and the under. They both really, though, like the over in Auburn, LSU. Still to come, Oregon keeps jumping up the AP Top 25, now up to number 3. Can Stanford try to give the Ducks a run for their money, or your money for that matter? We'll find out next. Take a look at Pac-12 and ACC ranked games this weekend. I like in our notes they put that Oregon has lost only 7 times in the past century, by the way, to unranked teams. It sounds very impressive when you put it that way, facing Stanford this weekend. NC State, the big favorite over Louisiana Tech, 19.5 though after their win against Clemson this past weekend. We'll see what the guys think about that. Welcome back in. Danny Kanell, Brady Quinn there. So let's start with Oregon at Stanford. Oregon favored by just 8 on the road there. The total is 58. What do you think about this game, Danny?
I hate it. I hate this game. I really do, because I think this game screams Pac-12 doing Pac-12 things. Like Oregon is in the driver's seat.
Oh, no, don't say it.
No, I'm not going to say it.
Okay.
I like the Ducks. I'm going to lay the 8 because last week was the Oregon Ducks doing Pac-12 things when they were struggling versus Arizona. Now, if you saw the final score, you might not have seen what it was in the third quarter. They took control of the game late and won handily, but I think that's the perfect setup for a game like this against Stanford. Mario Cristobal, who was after one of his receivers in the game, which I actually loved. He coached him up hard. The wide receiver took it, said, yes, sir, and went back there. But I think they can have a good week of practice. I don't think they'll take Stanford lightly. He can show them what they did to USC and said they ruined their season. We have something special right out in front of us. So I'm going to take the Ducks and lay the 8, but it does kind of make me nervous that this is a spot where the Pac-12 would ruin something special, because it looks like the first time they're going to get a team in the playoff.
Let's be real. The play here is the under. All right.
Yes.
You know Stanford's going to want to try to slow down the game, control the clock, run the football. And Mario Cristobal, I mean, if evidence wasn't watching Justin Herbert go to the NFL and then no one realized he had a howitzer and how much they can open things up, well, case in point, he's got a former O-lineman basically coaching the team, trying to say, just run the ball, just run the ball. Both teams are trying to pound away at each other, running the football. I'll lay the 8 points in Oregon. I think they're clearly the better team. They'll find ways of getting to edges and creating some big plays. Stanford struggles with that, in my opinion. So I'll lay the 8 points, but the under is the play on this one.
Producer Jack would like to point out that Washington has been to the playoff. He would like respect put on Washington.
Yeah, they had a great opening drive in that game, and then they didn't score afterwards. In fact, the Pac-12 hasn't scored after that point.
There you go. Arizona State at UCLA. UCLA just a slight favorite at home by 3. Over under here is 55.5. BQ. You're making Pete Prisco a little happy here.
Yeah, I don't like this game. I wouldn't bet anything.
Do we like
in this
any
game
game at
well,
this
no,
point?
just
Like every time.
Because I don't know who's going to show up and what this is going to look like. I really don't. To me, it's a battle of 2 quarterbacks, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Jaden Daniels, and which one's able to take over. I think Dorian Thompson-Robinson has showcased the ability, at least playing from the pocket, throwing the football, to be more effective this year than Jaden Daniels has. But something tells me Arizona State can keep this one close, if not just surprise a lot of people. So I'm going to go ahead and take the 3 points. For some reason, too, I feel like this game has more of a feel to an under to it, but I think this game could honestly go either way. I wouldn't play it. I wouldn't bet it, but if I had to, that's what I'd do.
You see Jaden Daniels on the year, 2 touchdowns and 3
not
interceptions.
good.
No, it's just not been great. Dorian Thompson-Robinson only completing 57% of his passes, but when he does, he's hitting big plays down the field. I like the risk reward a little bit better, taking those shots down the field. I look at these teams' losses. And clearly Arizona State got back on track last week with a big win against Colorado, but they lost to BYU. I think UCLA losing to Fresno State is not the end of the world. Like, that's not as bad of a loss as you may think. Fresno State was beating Oregon in the third quarter of their game. I think that's a really good team. I feel like I trust UCLA more in this spot, so I'm going to take UCLA playing at home. I'm going to lay the 3.
Louisiana Tech at NC State. I get that NC State beat Clemson. This is a big number for them. 19 and a half.
Hangover. Now's the
now's the
game.
hangover.
They won, though. They won.
Yes, but they're out celebrating too much.
I
You're either wallowing in your sorrows, you're drinking your sorrows away, or you saw Dave Doran after the game, cigar in hand, solo cup in the other. Like, that's rubbing off. You start feeling good about yourself. This is every coach's worst nightmare. You come off a big game like that, and then you play an opponent where your team kind of takes them lightly because you just beat Clemson. Well, the minute you do that, college football, we've seen parity this year like never before. And I know Louisiana Tech isn't a great team, but I think they can prevent just enough problems in a sloppier game to keep it within that big number of 19.5. I also think in these sort of hangover games, when you see them kind of struggling out of the gate, that you take a lower scoring game. So I can see this one being like 7-3 mid-7 quarter.
Come on.
Yeah.
The party's still going for NC State. Look, they're going to win this game, but I think their defense that was so keyed in on everything with Clemson last week, they have maybe overlooked the offensive attack here of La Tech. So a lot of scoring in this one. I'm going to go ahead and be on the side of La Tech. I'll take the 19.5 points, but I love the over. I think you're going to see a fair amount of scoring in this one. especially coming off that big win with Clemson. I just think maybe they take their foot off the gas a little bit, but a lot of scoring. Should be a fun game.
You're going to make Emory Hunt very happy there, both of you. Okay, we get Louisville at number 24, Wake Forest here. Wake Forest favored by 6.5 at home. The total 61.5. Both of you like Wake Forest. You're on different sides of the total, though. Brady, where are you going?
Yeah, look, I'm taking the over in this one. I think Sam Hartman, Wake Forest, they've showcased the ability to be able to throw the football through the air and make some big plays in the passing game. I think they'll be able to do that versus Louisville's defense. And I think it's going to be tough to stop Malik Cunningham. Look, he's the leading rusher for this team. He's a dual-threat quarterback. I think he'll be able to put up some points. So that number to me, at 61.5, it's a bit low. So I'm on the side of Wake Forest. I believe you are too, but a little more high-scoring affair.
I actually feel more confident about Wake Forest in this one. I think Wake Forest is a pretty good football team.
Yeah.
Dave Clawson has this team playing. I know, they've, beating Florida State isn't that big of a deal anymore, but it wasn't even close. They won by 20. They beat Virginia by 20. They've been pretty dominant in every single win this year. I don't really worry about them playing at home. And I think if anything, they're saying, hey, wait a second. Why are we one of the only teams that's 4-0 that's sitting here this low in the top 25, maybe still playing with a little chip on their shoulder, even going back to some of the, wasn't this the WikiLeaks, the email leaks, the game plan leaks was with Louisville and them? So
yeah.
I think there's still a little bad blood there. So I think Wake Forest, Clawson's not going to let anybody forget about that anytime soon. ACC rivalry.
That was like 4 years ago.
It runs deep. It still cuts deep. You watch.
Boston College at Clemson. Clemson licking their wounds at home. They get 16 here. Top 25. They're 25 right now, barely hanging on. What do you think about this game?
They have no
Where does
business.
hangover have to do in this game?
Okay, no hangovers in this one. BC is way too academic for that big. They don't party. They just get right back to their schoolwork after a big win against Missouri.
College in Boston not partying?
Yeah, no. So with BC, with Clemson, Amanda, I said Oklahoma, how do you trust them? How do you trust Clemson? They should win. They have no part being in the top 25. Their offense is abysmal. They're still trying to figure things out. I think they're having a crisis of identity. What do they want to be? The plays that they've been calling that they got bailed out by Trevor Lawrence and and Deshaun Watson before that are not working behind a porous offensive line. I don't know how you trust them. Even when you say, all right, this is championship caliber, I still think they'll have enough to win this game. But Boston College is playing with house money at this point. They had a big win last week. Nobody thought they could do it. They stormed the field. I think they're going to play with a lot of confidence, seeing kind of a wounded, champ out there that they see vulnerable. I think they'll present some challenge. So I actually like them to cover this number. And I also like the under because I still think Clemson's defense, even with all those injuries, will still be able to at least contain Boston College.
No. You see, what you missed was the campaigning that just started. All right. Dabo Swinney, after this game, after they put up a huge number versus Boston College, is going to start campaigning. Because, look, we've never seen a two-loss team make it into the college football playoff. So he's going to start talking about their schedule and who they've played, which really isn't that tough of a schedule. But once they win this conference, because I do believe they still will be the winner of the ACC, he's going to start pointing back to some of that huge margin of victory. So I think they're going to go up in this game, and they're not going to let their foot off the gas. They're going to put up a ton of points. They're going to make it extremely uncomfortable Boston College to score at all and starting to make claim to all of this. So I think it's going to be Clemson scoring early and often in this one and trying to kind of make a statement that, hey, look, we might have dropped one, dropped two early, but we're coming back. We still should be a part of that national conversation.
This will be the first time, though, that this group of Clemson players has had to kind of dig deep. Because every other season they've had one loss early, and then you could still say, we can still make the playoff. If we win the ACC, we can still make the playoff. It's no guarantee now. I just wonder where the psyche of this team. I think they have a healthy culture, but they'll be challenged like never before at 2-2 this early in the season.
They need Georgia to win the SEC, all right, and they need to win the ACC, obviously take care of business. But right now starts their campaign. I'm telling you, for their roadmap, they're going to start trying to beat the oblivion out of whoever's across them on the field.
Politician Dabo Swinney. We're going to find out this weekend, though, if they can dig deep, as Danny said. All right, recapping their bigs here. Danny, the game you hated, I believe, Oregon at Stanford, right? You didn't like that game, but you guys both agree going with Oregon and the under there. The game Brady doesn't love, Arizona State at UCLA. Going with Arizona State there and the under. Danny on the complete opposite side, going with UCLA and the over. Coming up, best of the rest out of the ranked teams, including BYU at Utah State. And Danny, your favorite, Coastal Carolina, the massive favorite against UL Monroe, next. I will give us credit. We caught up on time in the show, by the way. We only have 3 more games to go through. We got a good couple minutes to go
Does
through.
that mean we can get some confetti finally? I mean, we haven't gotten any confetti so far.
You guys have had a lot of good picks in this game. So taking a look at the ones we're about to go through, BYU at Utah State. Danny, Coastal Carolina, I'm very curious to see what you think about that 34.5 at home. But maybe you'll go for it. So let's go through them. So number 13, BYU at Utah State. BYU the favorite at home by 7.5. The total here, 59 in a hook. Brady, what do you think about this game?
Well, I think BYU is going to take care of business. Low-scoring game, though, in my opinion. Even though I think Utah State can put up some points, I don't think they will in this one. You know, one of the things that dawned on me when you start looking at some of the Mountain West teams and a team like BYU that played a lot of football games last year is, you know, they've done well versus Pac-12 teams. I think it's one of the reasons too why BYU has had so much success this year, even losing Zach Wilson. But it was all those reps, all those games, all the practice they got in comparison to some of their opponents this year who maybe didn't play a full schedule a year ago. So I think that's paid off in huge dividends for teams like BYU and some of the other Mountain West teams. But in this matchup, you know, Jaron Hall, he's been phenomenal. They can run the football well with Algier in the backfield. Too much for BYU. I'm going to go ahead and lay the points in a low-scoring game.
I watched a lot of Utah State's game against Boise State this past week. Logan Bonner struggled. He had a bunch of really bad interceptions. They were struggling just to move the ball and finish off drives in the red zone. I think BYU's pretty good. Like 4-0, they've had a bunch of wins against the Pac-12. I mean, you can make an argument they should represent the Pac-12 South in the championship game the way they've dominated that one. They are deep, I think, and it's interesting what you say because look at some of the Pac-12 teams.
Yeah.
Washington played 4 games. Like, you're not getting development, you're not getting experience, you're not playing in front of crowds for the younger players, you don't get used to playing in hostile environments. I absolutely think it impacted some teams negatively that didn't get to play full seasons, that didn't even get to play 4, 5, 6 games. And then you had a team like BYU last year who ran, had an unbelievable season, building confidence, played in a massive game against Coastal. Even though they lost that game, they still got to experience it. I think that kind of made this team, replacing some guys like Zach Wilson, replacing the Jeff Grimes, the offensive coordinator, it made that transition a lot easier because they had all that experience.
All right, pretty quickly, we get the Warhawks going to Coastal Carolina. There's that big number, 34.5. The total, 57.5. Both of you, though, going with Coastal Carolina. Is that right, Danny?
Well, Rhett Rodriguez is out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're going to backup quarterback for Louisiana Monroe, and we know Coastal Carolina can put up a bunch of points. It really comes down to how effective their offense will be. But I'm going to go ahead and lay the points here. I don't feel great about it. I like the over more than anything else in this one.
I do, too. I like Coastal in this one. Jamie Chadwell, we were talking about Clemson, wanting to, boat race every opponent throughout the season. I think Coastal is still, and it's hard to find a way after the season you had last year, which was awesome. How do you motivate your team? I think they're watching Cincinnati get some love. They saw Louisiana get some love. I think they're saying, hey, we keep blowing out teams the way we have. Maybe we can enter that conversation, which I don't think is likely. I don't even think they would get much consideration. But hey, you can go out there and impress and turn a lot of heads. I think they're going to take every opportunity to do it. This offense is really good. They completely dominated UMass last week. I thought UMass would put up some points. Was totally wrong on that one. They put up 56 by themselves. I think they do the similar against Louisiana Monroe.
I think in your home shot, you moved your Florida State helmet. I'm going to get you some Coastal gear. All right, less than 2 minutes in the show. We get number 18, Fresno State at Hawaii. Fresno State getting 10 on the road there. The total 62.5. What do you think, Danny?
Jake Haener is one of the better quarterbacks in the country. His performance against UCLA was heroic when he was, banged up, and he finds a way to will his team to a win. Hawaii's a little bit of a mess this year. Fresno State had their wake-up call game last week, so I think they were coached hard all week. I think they get dialed back in, traveling out to Hawaii, and get back on track. The
time zone change is my only concern about this one. This actually, I'm shocked this number is what it is. I think it should be closer to 16, 17, honestly, for Fresno State. So I'm going to lay the 10 points here easily. I do think it'll be a low-scoring game, but I think too many people are looking at UNLV last week where Fresno State struggled and saying, oh, maybe the team's not as good as we think. Easy now. All right, that was a wake-up call. They'll go out to Hawaii, be prepared. Hawaii's been wildly inconsistent this year.
Jack, how many games did we go through? Do you know? A little bit over 20? He thinks 21. Do you know how many agree or on those you had lock unity on?
9.
9. Good job,
9.
Brady
9.
Quinn.
Nice. Look at that.
You agreed on 9 of them.
track.
They're the ones there. You got 2 of them there. Or no, wait. No, almost 3. Those
There
are the
they
ones
are.
you guys all agreed on. I'm going to call those your best bets.
And here comes the confetti.
Where is it?
Wait for it. There we
nice.
go. Finally.
Good job, AG. Way to be on it. I like it.
Gonna go AG.
You had too many. Oh, gosh. Okay, we're going to end this show right now. That is Danny Kanell, DK, BQ, Amanda Guerra. Thanks for joining us.
Love the confetti.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.